Is
Black Star Pirate Radio.
St. Mary checks in at 88 degrees and sunny. Wind check, east-southeast at 5 miles an hour. First up, a British activist languishes in an Indian jail, sparking calls for intervention that test the very bedrock of diplomatic integrity and individual sovereignty.
Jagtar Singh Johal, a British national, has been held in Punjab since 2017 without conviction, accused of funding a gangster and conspiring to murder a Hindu leader. He was reportedly abducted from the street, and his detention has been flagged as arbitrary by the UN Working Group, citing torture allegations and a lack of due process. This exposes not only the UK's diplomatic inertia, but also sets a dangerous precedent for the protection of all British citizens abroad, eroding their fundamental right to consular assistance and fair trial. A viable alternative to the current prolonged inaction is for Keir Starmer to publicly commit to making Johal's case a non-negotiable priority in any future diplomatic engagement with India, specifically by linking it to ongoing trade negotiations or visa agreements, thereby creating tangible leverage. The most direct next move is for Starmer to issue a definitive public statement, backed by a cross-party parliamentary motion, demanding either evidence-based charges that stand up to international scrutiny or Johal's immediate release, making his situation a clear red line for Labour's foreign policy and, by extension, the UK's commitment to its citizens.
This isn't just a legal battle. It's a modern echo of colonial power dynamics, where a citizen's provenance is disregarded, their identity rendered secondary to perceived state interests. Imagine a single thread unraveling from a carefully woven tapestry. That's Johal's life, pulled taut by allegations, leaving his family's trust in British protection fraying. It challenges our collective understanding of self-worth as structural, not contingent on external validation or the political expediency of a nation-state. The cultural alternative is for the Sikh diaspora in the UK to amplify their collective voice by forming a robust, internationally connected human rights coalition, leveraging global legal networks and human rights NGOs, rather than relying solely on the slow grind of... For now, the immediate cultural signal is for British Sikh organizations to launch a unified, multi-platform digital campaign, Justice for Jaggi, linking his plight to universal human rights and the principle of individual autonomy, ensuring this story...
Patching in a caller, the contrarian. You're on the signal.
All right, but what's the actual cost to Starmer or the UK government if they do intervene aggressively? Will it sour a crucial trade deal with India, potentially costing British jobs for one man's freedom? Or is the perceived self-worth worth the economic hit?
The transmitter pops once, adjusts, holds, ozone drift. The signal is still here. Copy that, bringing it back to the main thread.
That's the core calculus, isn't it? The perceived economic hit versus the structural integrity of civic trust. From an architect's perspective, the cost of principle is often miscalculated. While a trade deal might yield immediate economic gains, the long-term erosion of trust when a government fails to protect its citizens is a far greater structural cost. It chips away at the unwavering autonomy of the nation's self-worth, making it contingent on external economic factors rather than internal ethical foundations. Practicing sharp discernment here means separating the toxic residue of short-term economic fear from the architectural signal of resilient civic structures built on consent, provenance, and dignity for all. True strength comes from defending the individual, not sacrificing them on the altar of a transactional relationship.
Indeed, it's a question of structural integrity, the price of principle versus perceived economic gain. Speaking of hidden costs and opaque structures, let's shift focus to Australia, where transparency around a private security firm's failures is being deliberately obscured. A US firm faced a fine for security lapses in Australian immigration detention, yet the financial penalty itself remains a state secret, exposing a gaping hole in public accountability.
Serco, a US-based multinational, which operates facilities like Christmas Island and Yonga Hill detention centers, confirmed receiving a fine from the Australian Border Force for contractual non-compliance. These failures often involve serious security breaches, inadequate supervision leading to detainee harm, or systemic human rights concerns reported by various NGOs. The ABF's refusal to disclose the amount, citing commercial in confidence, effectively shields Serco from public scrutiny, prevents proper oversight of taxpayer funds, and undermines public confidence in the integrity of government contracting, particularly in sensitive areas involving vulnerable populations. A viable alternative would be for the Australian Parliament to mandate, via a Transparency in Public Contracts Act, the public disclosure of all fines levied against contractors operating public services, especially where human rights and significant public funds are involved, alongside clear explanations for the non-compliance and remedial actions. The Australian Parliament should immediately amend procurement laws to require full public disclosure of all fines levied against contractors managing services in sensitive sectors like immigration detention, starting with this Serco case, and establish an independent audit commission with subpoena power to review all existing commercial in confidence clauses in public service contracts.
This opacity creates a shadow ledger, where profits are clear but accountability is blurred. It's like building a grand civic structure, but hiding the blueprints for its foundational flaws. The public is left guessing if the walls are truly sound, or just painted over with corporate doublespeak. This is where we need sharp discernment to separate the toxic residue of corporate secrecy from the architectural signal of transparent governance. Culturally, the Australian public could demand citizen oversight committees for detention centers, drawing inspiration from successful prison reform movements globally, empowering local communities and human rights advocates to bring sunlight into these opaque operations. The immediate cultural countermove is for civil society groups, like the Human Rights Law Center, to launch an aggressive Freedom of Information campaign targeting all Serco contracts and penalties, using myth and humor to highlight the absurdity of commercial in confidence when public funds and human lives are at stake, thereby forcing open.
But isn't commercial in confidence sometimes necessary to protect a company's competitive edge? If every minor penalty is public, won't firms just stop bidding for these complex contracts, leaving the government with fewer, potentially less efficient options?
That's the argument, yes, but it often conflates proprietary business information with public accountability. Protecting a competitive edge should not come at the expense of transparency when public funds are involved, especially in services touching on human dignity. True resilient inner and civic architectures are built on trust, and trust requires transparency. If a company's competitive edge relies on hiding failures and avoiding public scrutiny, then that's not a healthy competition. It's a structural weakness. Integrating logic and emotion here means recognizing that while protecting legitimate intellectual property is logical, the public's emotional need for accountability and ethical governance is equally, if not more, vital for a stable civic framework. A robust system should attract firms that are confident in their performance and willing to be transparent, not those who thrive in the shadows.
Same dossier, new angle. Keep the thread tight. New tape on deck. Muslims in DR Congo mark Eid under. In DR Congo's Bunia, the Muslim community marked Eid al-Adha under strict Ebola restrictions, revealing the profound tension between sacred communal rights and urgent public health mandates. New dossier incoming, the Indian. Indeed, the stakes are immense. It's about designing systems that protect both the body and the spirit, honoring dignity in crisis. We've traced these threads of autonomy and resilience across continents tonight, always returning to the compass within.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.